Hey everyone, it's Leanne. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to share with you this card I created, and it is a birthday unicorn card. And this is made using the magical birthday stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But to begin, I have an A2 size card base cut out of cardstock here. And then I've created a frame using watercolor paper, and I've cut this frame a ½ inch around the entire perimeter in from that A2 card size. So A2 and then ½ inch off that is to create this. This is the stamp set here that I will be using. And so with this stamp set, I didn't buy this stamp set. I actually got it as a birthday bonus. So I went to Simon Says Stamp website and signed up for the newsletter, and I put in my birthday. And then in August, my birthday's in August, they sent me a coupon code. So if I made an order, I could put in the code and receive this stamp set. So that's how I got this, and it's super cute. So this is the stamp set that I'm using in the video today. So I'm placed my elements here. I stamped out my sentiment. I wanted to stack it, and so I wanted to make sure that I could lay it out and get the spacing all correct. So this sample piece is sort of my guide, and I'm showing where I want to place that on the card as well, putting it in the position I want it to be in. So I'm going to start stamping with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. It will be the same that I used because of the Copic markers that I'll be coloring with. I'm stamping the happy birthday first. It's the largest part of the sentiment, and so then I'm going to use that as the anchor, and I'm going to stamp all the other text elements off of that, so centering from this main piece. So starting with the top, adding that in, just eyeballing center. And then I want to stack the sentiment, but it's one line, so I'm covering up one side with Post-it tape, and I'm just going to ink half of it, and then I'll pull the Post-it tape off before I stamp it. I've actually stamped it before with the Post-it tape on. It makes a mess. Don't do that. But then here I can just get the first part of the sentiment that I want inked, and then putting that back on, I took a baby wipe and cleaned it off in between, and now I'm just going to finish up the sentiment on the other side. And there you can see I have only that part inked. So here's the unicorn that I'm going to stamp on the bottom right. And then a little cupcake, which is sort of resembling the birthday cake, and then a little candle on top too. So I've just sped up the coloring so you can see the process. I'm not using a lot of colors with each color block, I guess, or a section of color. I'm not using a lot of markers for each color. Because it's a small space. So I'm just having a base color that I'm laying down, a nice light base color, and then coming in with the darker tone of each color block and just creating the shadows. And I'm really thinking about where those highlights are. Typically when I color something, I choose the highlight or the sun point to be in the top left corner, and so I just kind of work off that, thinking that if the sun were shining down, what parts of the hair would be shiny and what parts would be in shadow. And usually anything that's tucked behind something or along a base is always in shadow. And then from that, if it's curved, then usually there's a high point on that curve, and that part's really lighter than the rest. Also too, you may have noticed my marker, I didn't have a cap on the other end. These are double-ended Copic markers. And sometimes they'll blot on the one end. So it's like you get a swell of ink coming out the marker tip, and it can make a real mess on your art. If you're working on something and then it just pukes out a blot of ink, it's terrible. But the way that it says to handle that on the Copic website is to just pull off both caps on each end, and then the airflow can sort of disperse the ink inside of the barrel, and it reduces the chance of that blotting happening. So that's just what I was doing there. And so for my unicorn, I'm trying to use light, whimsical colors, rainbow colors, something bright and vibrant, nothing too dark. And then my unicorn is white, and so I'm using this light blue, this baby blue B21 as my shadow color. And normally I would blend this with a colorless blender to get a smooth gradient between the paper color and this blue. But this is sort of a cartoony stamp, and I just want to leave those hard edges on those shadows. So I'm not going to blend them, and I still think they look really nice. It's a different effect. It's not something I would normally do, but I do like it for this application. So I'm keeping all my shadow lines pretty hard on the other elements outside of the hair, or the mane and tail. And so here I slowed down the camera just so you could see how I'm creating the flame on top of the candle. So I did a base of the lighter yellow, that Y30 or Y13, and then coming in with Y19, which is more of an orange, and creating that right at the center of the flame. And then I'm using my light blue here, B00, just to put down a shadow, and this grounds the element to the scene and sort of places it in the scene so it doesn't look like it's floating around. And so again, just with the shadow, thinking about how the object is large and what parts are closest to the ground would be a harder shadow, that sort of thing. Now I'm taking this stamp set from Lawn Fawn, and this is +1, and it has some tiny hearts. So I'm just going to stamp some hearts in the scene. I'm creating a little eye directional movement here with the placement of the hearts starting at the candle and then leading up, swirling around behind the unicorn and up to the right edge. And so now that I have the hearts down, I'm coming back in with the star stamp from that same stamp set and adding some stars as well as the hearts. Now the stamp set Magical Birthday with the unicorn does have hearts and stars, but they're solid block stamps, and so I would have had to use a colored ink, and I don't have a lot of varied color ink. So I wanted to do basically a stamp that had an outline that I could color in. So using the colors that I used in the mane and the tail are the colors that I'm using to color in the hearts and the stars on this card here. And I'm just using the lightest of all the colors, not doing any shadows or anything. It's a very small space, so it would be hard to get all those in. But this just adds a bit more of the color dispersed around the scene. Now here are the distress inks I'm using. I've cracked pistachio, tumbled glass, picked raspberry, and wilted violet. And so I'm creating those sort of in layers. So on opposite corners, I'm starting with the picked raspberry and bringing that in. And then the wilted violet will come out from those corners on each side. And this is sort of a mirror of each other on each side of the edge. So just blending them into each other. And then I'm going to come in with the tumbled glass. And my tumbled glass ink is actually fading. I need to get a re-inker, so it's pretty light going down. I had to put a lot extra down to get that color. And then the cracked pistachio, finishing off the other corners with that color and blending it into the tumbled glass as well. I have these sequins from Michaels. I picked this random jar up. So I'm going to use the blue there, and then this green, and then this pink as well. And I'm just going to dab these on with some white craft glue, and I'm going to put them on the border of my card just to create a little more sparkle and bling. Normally I would use these elements if I was doing a shaker card. I would put them inside the window. And they're really tiny to glue on, but this is a tiny border too, so it seemed to fit okay. And so I didn't disperse them evenly. I sort of put them in clusters or groups in each of the color blocks, as you can see here. So just to add these, very easy, I use the end of my X-Acto knife and just pick up a very small amount of the craft glue and then dip it into the sequin and add it to the frame. And here you can see sort of the luster that they have. So now I'm going to attach the frame to my card base, and I'm going to use foam tape just to make that pop up and create more of like a picture frame for this. So I'm adding foam tape all the way around the edges of this border, and it worked out pretty nice because my foam tape is the same width as the border, so I didn't have to trim anything in half, and it fit perfectly. It was just all very lucky and perfect. So now I'm ready to attach the border to the background. I'm lining it up with the edges of my hands and just making sure that nothing's hanging over too much on the left or the right. Once it's all looking good, I push it down into place. And now I'm ready to attach this to my card backing. So I'm using my tape roller here and just going around the perimeter, and then I did an X in the middle. And holding this upside down on the folded edge of the base of the card, I find it's really easy to line it up that way. And then everything's nice and straight. and I just push that into place, and I have my card ready there. So to finish this off, I'm going to use my Wink of Stella brush pen in clear glitter. I'm going to add some glitter to the unicorn horn, and then adding it to the mane and the tail, imagining that a unicorn would be super sparkly and would have a glittery mane, I guess. Or maybe I'm thinking of My Little Pony, but that sort of idea. And then adding this to the top of the cupcake as well. And then just very lightly just dabbing it on the little hearts and stars too. And so there you have it. This is my magical birthday unicorn card, and I gave this to my sister. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified the next time I post a video. Thank you so much for watching.